The Sixth Amendment says that anyone who commits a crime must attend a session in jury so that they find out about what they did wrong and then deal with the consequences. The Sixth Amendment lets the person who committed the crime be questioned about what he or she did wrong. The person who committed the crime may have to spend some time in jail. People can testify if they want to, but they don't have to if they don't want to. During the making of the Bill of Rights, the Federalists didn't have a document such as this was necessary, as opposed to the views of the Anti-Federalists who refused to sign a constitution without the Bill of Rights. The case, Sandin versus Connor, used the Sixth Amendment to determine that state prisoners who served disciplinary segregation, since they violated prison rules for 30 days, weren't allowed due process of law so that they could find out the outcome. Without the Speedy Trial Clause, innocent people would be in jail for a long time. Without the Public Trial Clause, lots of bad things would happen to good people and no one would know about them. The Sixth Amendment protects the people from unjust accusations and has provided a basic principle for the American judiciary system.
Next is the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment gave African American men the right to vote, as it is the right of citizens of the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The way that the 14th and 15th Amendments were made were through the Reconstruction Amendments, as they were both post-civil after the North defeated the South, and the Emancipation Proclamation was signed freeing all slaves. After the war, the Three-Fifths Compromise would be no more, giving more representation for the southern states, as the slave population now counted as one instead of three-fifths, but without the voting rights for all those accounted for. The government needed a solution to avoid this problem, and thus the 14th and 15th Amendments were created to preserve this balance. The first and biggest challenge that was brought up after the 15th Amendment was passed was that the southern states found a loophole in this amendment and still did not allow African Americans to vote through poll taxes, literacy tests, and other means, as African Americans did not have the education or means to pass these. And this was solved by the Voting Rights Acts of 1965, which broke these barriers and allowed African Americans to vote all over the U.S. The second challenge was that women were infuriated when this happened, as they still did not have any suffrage or were even acknowledged when it came to voting, let alone having a representative that was a woman. This amendment was degrading to women, as in their views at the times they were seen below the African Americans, and this was a very small step in civil rights. Life today with the 15th Amendment is kind of obvious, because we had our first black president, which was a huge step in civil rights, and along with the support of millions of African Americans who voted for him. This is the perfect example of the 15th Amendment and its impact on even our generation.
The 16th Amendment gave the government the power to tax the income of citizens and collect funds from them without partitions determined by populace. Until 1909, the Constitution allowed the government to collect tax in order to finance certain federal affairs. Not all states paid equal taxes because of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, that determined how much each state would pay based on the amount of people in the state. Because of this, the wealthiest people in the state paid the same tax against their income as the poorest people in the state. Many people were able to avoid the tariff that most greatly funded the government by simply changing their buying and spending habits. As the United States and government grew in size, the method with which they collected these taxes was no longer sufficient. Not all states accepted the amendment right away because of the increase of government involvement in all transactions, private or public. The idea of a big government scared many American citizens who felt as though they had just broken free from the extremely hands-on British government. The wealthy sector of Americans felt as though they were being taxed far more than anyone else. And an overwhelming feeling of resentment encouraged many wealthy men to reform against the amendment in the hope of reestablishing a more equal taxing system. The Americans feared The Americans feared they were being taxed more than anyone else, and the income tax system caused controversy over the years because of the power it granted the government to make large revenue off their citizens. Though considered unconstitutional for the hands-on style of the income tax system, the government can help to redistribute the wealth and create a more equal economy, or at least try to. The income tax is spent on national defense, health care, and job and family security.